Episode 4, a discussion and analysis of episodes 1 and 2 of Game of Thrones Season 6. Okay, so it's Sunday night. We just finished watching episode 2. We're going to talk a little bit about the first 2 episodes of Game of Thrones. I have a guest tonight, and it is my wife, Kate.
Hello,
Kate.
Hi.
Let's start at the wall and then move down from there. So, it started off with Jon still being dead and Davos finding him and bringing him into the room and some of the Night's Watch going in there and protecting his body. What do you think about that?
Well, I liked how the season started off, right where they left off, with that they didn't draw out this whole thing of, is he going to stay dead? How long is he going to be dead? That sort of thing. Longer than these first 2 episodes. I think that would have gotten really long. So I feel happy that now at the end of episode 2 we know.
Yeah, I pretty much like everything there with Jon and with most of those guys. I thought it was a little weird that Davos felt the need to rush the body into some protected area and has this kind of weird attachment to Jon. I mean, the only 2 explanations I can come up with is that they're both good guys, and as a fellow good guy, Davos wanted to, I don't know, it just seems, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The other reason I could come up with is that Jon is a little bit like Stannis, and they were kind of all working together, and Davos is alone for the first time and doesn't know what to do. It doesn't fully make sense to me why Davos was so protective of Jon's body.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of a leap that they're making in terms of how much Davos is trying to be there for Jon right now, even though right now he's dead. I think that Davos is a very perceptive character, both in the books and in the show. And I think that it was very clear to Davos that Stannis thought highly of Jon. And so they even had that in one of the episodes last season. And so I think that might be part of it, is because of Stannis, or Davos, how he felt about Stannis and knowing what Stannis felt about Jon. So I think that might be a little bit there. I think he also, again, is just perceptive and recognizes Jon as someone who's a little bit different from the rest. But, I mean, it's so weird to me that up at the wall, the moment that someone dies, that they're not already burning the body with the risk of the White Walkers there. So, I mean, clearly they can't do that, but it's kind of a huge hole that isn't addressed.
Right. I guess they might have left the body out there on purpose so that people could find it, because Alistair Thorne seemed to have a little speech prepared, you know, for when the body was discovered, and he explained that he did it because Jon forced the choice upon them. So I guess it might make sense to let it linger there for a little while, but right, it certainly seems like they would have burned it right away under most conditions. What did you think of Alistair's speech? Did you find it convincing at all? Do you think, like, I've never really seen him as a bad guy. I feel like we're supposed to kind of see him as a bad guy, but I feel more like he was doing what he perceived right given the circumstances.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at his character objectively, he's doing what he really believes is right for the Night's Watch, which he's truly dedicated himself to, and he actually cares about the Night's Watch and it surviving. And so he's following his own moral code to do what he thinks is right. And in that sense, that's, you know, I can see where he's coming from with that. I think if you're coming from it in a much more subjective way, the fact that he, you know, hates Jon right away and they have their whole rivalry and everything that kind of goes on with that, I think that it makes it more likely for viewers to want to hate him. But I don't see him as a bad guy. I think he's just trying to do what he thinks is best.
Right. I feel like the show writers were a little lazy with the writing there, because if he was going to kill his Lord Commander over letting the wildlings in, I mean, just last season he chose to let them in. It was like they were already in there. His plan didn't really seem all that well thought out, and I just chalked that up mostly to laziness on the writer's part.
Yeah, I think he probably hoped that Jon was never going to come back when he left, and that would have just kind of solved all of that. And so when he did come back and all those wildlings were there, I think he felt like, okay, I'm not going to kill him yet, but I'm going to kill him. Now that this has actually come to fruition, then I'm definitely going to do something about this guy, and he did. Yeah,
I was glad I had Alistair in my Deadpool for tonight's episode, for the second episode, and I was kind of glad they took him captive. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the former Night's Watchman and who's going to become a new Lord Commander, if anybody, or where that whole story is going to go.
Yeah, I think the Night's Watch is over. I think the whole point of the Night's Watch is to provide or to protect everybody from the White Walkers, and they can't even do that anymore with the less than 100 men they have anyway. I think it's pretty much a done deal. And now the fact that John is back, I definitely think his watch is ended, and he's kind of free from all his obligations to kind of. I mean, he's been seeing the bigger picture all along here for a while, and clearly he can't do that through the Night's Watch. So I think in episode 2 here that we're kind of watching the Night's Watch completely fall apart when nobody is really in charge anymore. I think that's just it.
Yeah. So then the other thing that happened was in episode 1, we saw that Melisandre is extremely old. What do you think about that?
I think in a lot of ways it was portrayed like a great reveal. I guess for me, I mean, you and I are both, book followers as well. And so we knew that, but to me, it wasn't like this huge thing. It just kind of makes sense. She has all these other powers that she can do, and all these glamoring abilities. And so it just kind of made sense to me. I think the symbolism behind it is that she's really feeling the weight of being so wrong with Stannis. Yeah. And the way that they're really trying to show that visually is when she's all pristine and beautiful, it looks like she's got everything together. And then in that last shot, she just looks so dejected. And I think it's kind of their way of showing that in the show.
Right. And she might have been a follower of R'hllor for hundreds of years, only to have it all blow up in her face. So it's not just, it's hard enough in real life when somebody after 30 or 40, 50 years gives up religion or starts to question their gods or whatever. But then imagine centuries of that. And I don't know if that's her complete story, but it would add a little more.
Well, and I'm trying to remember, but I believe that she was like a poor orphan who was greatly mistreated, and it was the Red God that kind of brought her up and showed her a different life. So he really is her salvation. So her whole identity is wrapped up into this. And so I think, I definitely think it makes sense that she would, be struggling to the extent that she is for being wrong. But it's something where she's aware that her visions can be wrong. And so, I guess this is a really big one to be wrong about, but at the same time, her visions can also still be right. I think she's kind of quitting a little too early, and she was just so tenacious with her beliefs up until this point. I'm a little surprised that she's giving up so completely, and that Davos has to be the one to kind of bring her back to even try. I got to say that he's got to be one of the most forgiving people and characters ever, because he loved Shireen, he loved Stannis. It wasn't just respect that he had actual love for these people, and she was a big part of their downfall. And it's not like he was ever really close to her. And then here, he's being awfully nice. I give the guy props for being able to put a lot of things aside. He's got a heart of gold, that one. But. Yeah,
I didn't find it fully convincing that he asked Melisandre if she can bring people back from the dead. I don't know why he would even know that was in the arsenal. And, it seems like he would request that they try to do that for Stannis or Shireen or something. I guess the logistics of that is not possible. But that this whole thing is kicked off by Davos, it's just very unconvincing to me. Although I like it because I like Davos and I like Jon and they're the good guys. So I think it's just the show making a really clear case for good, or who the good people are.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm a fan of Davos. I really am. There's some parts here where I think it's maybe a little rushed, but I don't know if there's really an easier way to do it either. But I am a fan of Davos very much. And I'm curious to see what else he's going to do. I don't think this is going to be the last that we see of him being a hero, of bringing things together, but not the hero the way that Jon Snow is. I think he's more of a behind the scenes hero, and that's what I like so much about him.
And what do you think about the resurrection we got of Jon tonight?
I throughout the episode, I was definitely they're gonna have to do it. They're gonna have to do it. I was waiting for it. I'm excited that we got it again. They didn't draw it out any longer. It was a little anticlimactic, which you actually said right away after the episode ended. And I don't really know what I was looking for with it. Maybe more intense music or something. But it was something a little bit. I thought there would be a little bit more to it, but I am happy to have gotten it, and I'm curious to see how it's going to play out, because this is something where book readers where we have no idea. This is all uncharted territory, so I'm eager to see what happens now.
You think that the book's going to do it the same way? I think it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, you have a different theory on this.
Yeah, so at this point in the books, Jon is dead at the wall, and Melisandre is at the wall, and Shireen is at the wall, and Selyse is at the wall, and Stannis is outside Winterfell. So I feel like Shireen will be burned to bring back Jon, similar to the way Daenerys was brought back, or the way she walked into the pyre and came out a new person. I feel like in the books that's how it's got to be. Only death can pay for life, and Shireen will burn, and then Jon will emerge from the fire, or something like that.
I do think Shireen's death is what enabled Melisandre to bring Jon back. So I think that like she is cashing in the blood power that they achieved from that. But yeah, I think it's going to be somewhat similar in the books, but less bastardization to Stannis' character probably.
Yeah, for sure. So we're 2 episodes in, and it looks like Stannis is most likely not coming back. I'm going to hold on to one tiny little sliver of hope, and the only reason being that episode 3 is called Oath Breaker, and Brienne supposedly killed him with Oath Keeper. But no,
I think he might be the ghost of Winterfell.
Well, I would have thought that if something happened at Winterfell this season where dead people were showing up, then I would think for sure that Brienne put Stannis in a Bolton armor and put a Bolton soldier in Stannis' armor and made it look like Stannis was killed and sent him back with the army and he was infiltrating in there and doing stuff, but they haven't indicated anything like that. So he's probably toast, and now that the show likes to have redemption arcs, so it looks like they're going to have a Melisandre redemption arc, and if Stannis were to come back, I mean, he would be obliged to kill her, and it would screw up her arc.
That's assuming if he's still the same person after burning his daughter for nothing and failing in battle. Like, I mean, he failed totally and utterly. So, I mean, a lot of times I think the show and the books try to have you think you know a character, and then a lot of times horrible things happen, and then the character changes. But I am curious of like the whole season here is like, is it going to be the season of bringing back characters that we think are dead? So we already know they brought back Jon. I have a suspicion that they're going to bring back the Hound, and then are they going to bring back Stannis too? So
yeah, I just feel like with Jon and Stannis coming back, it'd be 2 fake outs from the same episode. And I would like it as a Stannis fan. I don't want to talk too much about Stannis because I already did a 40-minute blab fest about him.
Really good, by the way.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, so all my ideas are mostly in there. We'll just leave it to say that he's still alive in the books, and I think he's got a lot further to go in the books, and I think he's going to defeat the Boltons. But I think they're replacing his story arc with Jon and maybe a few other people. Already tonight we saw that the Glovers defeated the Greyjoys at Deepwood Motte, and of course in the books it was Stannis who did that.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're just taking his big roles and splitting it up amongst different characters.
I will say though, with the Melisandre of these last 2 episodes of episodes 1 and 2 of season 6 here, her character is finally a little bit more interesting to me. I tend to be drawn more to the characters that get more of this, that have this multi-dimensional aspect to them. And she's been so one-dimensional all this time that it is nice to kind of see a little bit more dimension to her. I don't know if it's going to change me liking her that much more, but there's room for growth there, and I like that. It's what I love about the series and the book so much, is this aspect.
Yeah, and in Dance with Dragons, they do have one chapter from Melisandre's point of view that really humanizes her. It's late in the book, and she talks about how Davos had suffered enough in the war, and she made sure that Davos' son couldn't be Stannis' squire because it was too dangerous, and she didn't want Davos to lose anymore. Because in the show, he lost his one son, but in the books, I think he lost 4 or 5 sons in the war. So that humanized her a little bit, and George R. R. Martin has said that he thinks that she's the most misunderstood character that there is. And for me personally, I don't think that's the case. I think it's, unless I'm wrong, I think I understand her pretty well, that she's actually thinks she's being a hero by saving the world, the same thing that Stannis thought. And if you can get inside their characters, we can understand that they think they're doing the right thing. And what's interesting, so she brought back Jon, and she did the leeches and all this other stuff. So is the Red God real? I wonder if they're going to explain this kind of really powerful stuff, because Thoros of Myr brought back Beric Dondarrion, and she was able to do this stuff. So I think the religious aspect, there's big implications for the fact that she actually has power. And that was one thing Stannis said, that he didn't necessarily even believe in the Red God, And he certainly didn't believe in the Seven, but he did believe in Melisandre because he saw that she had power, and he couldn't deny that. And we as show watchers can't deny it either.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, and actually really quick, just to add one more character that might even bring back is Lady Stoneheart. So there's a lot of characters that they could potentially be bringing back. So I think that you can only have so many. There's a quota that you can do with that. But
well, right, if they had brought back, if they do bring back Lady Stoneheart, which I kind of hope they don't, but if they do, it would have spoiled Jon's return because it would have just been too much coming back from the dead. And
but she might come later now,
right?
I don't know if this is intentional with the show or not, but if we go back to the time where Thoros of Myr was bringing back Beric Dondarrion after his fight with the Hound that he lost, Thoros of Myr, at some point he's explaining in that episode, and I might be mixing up a little bit of the books and the show here, but he was basically saying like he didn't even know he had this power the very first time that he did it. He was just very sad that he just lost a friend. And he was so overcome with that he just found himself saying the words because he's this priest and it's just what he knows. And I'm almost wondering if it's the emotion behind it. It's not necessarily the words, but if you take someone who has the power that Thoros and both Melisandre have, and then they have the words, but then it takes the emotionality that's just so important here because like Melisandre was just like, they had it in the episode 2 here tonight where she's like, please. And I'm wondering if that's kind of really the thing that kind of pushes over the edge of why they're able to do it is it's their actual the intense emotions behind it. And
yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. All right, so let's move away from the wall a little bit. Let's head south to Winterfell. So I don't know if I remember the exact sequence of how it happened in the first episode, but Sansa and Theon are running for their lives.
Yeah, they're basically running. This was something that I actually struggled with because, I mean, the show has already so clearly shown just how she has reverted and regressed back to this character who's so helpless. And so here she's the one who's like tripping behind Theon, who's had several of his toes removed as part of his torture with Ramsay, and yet he's outrunning her. She was so meek and so pathetic, I thought, in this scene that was kind of hard already, where it's like the show has already shown so much that she's fallen from where she was in season 4. But then like where she's struggling to like go through the water and then she looks to Theon if she should trust Brienne, and she can't remember the words and Pod has to help her. Like there's all these times where it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't really like that either. Yeah, totally. It should have been Theon that was terrified and so afraid of betraying Ramsay that he could barely move on and stuff. And it was a little bit annoying seeing that he was the one who was driving them while Sansa was relatively helpless.
I mean, she was helpless the entire time with that whole sequence.
Yeah.
And so it's my sincere hope that this is the very last that we're going to see Sansa just so pathetic like that.
Yeah, no.
I like her character in the books and in the show, but like I'm kind of reaching my limit of kind of that storyline for her. So hopefully it'll turn around. I will say though, I really enjoyed her and Brienne finally coming together. I feel like it's connecting us back to the oath that Brienne made to her mother. And it's been said so many times how Sansa, especially in the books, how she embodies so much of the Tully bloodline, and she looks so much like her mother and has a lot of that. So I just kind of feel like it's kind of connecting us back to that. And I like that. I like that Brienne is maybe going to be able to fulfill some of her oath a little bit more to Lady Catelyn that she couldn't do before. So
yeah, the scene overall, I mean, it was nice to see finally something good happen for Sansa, but I agree with the complaints you had, and then also, I don't know, it was just so predictable that they were going to be found and Brienne was going to show up and save the day. Like, it went pretty much exactly like you would expect. And then, suddenly Podrick is able to fight these.
What a
knights.
fast learner!
Yeah, so that I didn't fully buy all that, but the scene, it set in motion what it had to, and Sansa's in a good place now. And then in the second episode, not much happened, but she essentially forgave Theon, which was good. Theon's had maybe deservedly probably the roughest road of any character, and he tried to atone for what he did. She hugged him and seems to forgive him, and he doesn't want to be forgiven, so he doesn't want to go to the wall. He plans to go back home. I'm
still working that out of like he's just struggling so much with his guilt and how he says he doesn't want to be forgiven, that he just wants to continue punishing himself. I'm so worried that he's going to get caught by Ramsay's men and he's going to get flayed and put on their cross. And it would be such a tragic ending for his character, even though he did really horrific things. It's just something like at this point in how he did save Sansa's life and more than once there. I hope that's not the ending for him. I have a feeling it's going to be, but I hope that it's not.
Yeah, it seems like I don't really know why he would go home and what he's going to do there. And, we saw in the previews that the Boltons have some people burning on the cross to try to scare off their enemies or whatever. And it can certainly be Theon as one of those. So I won't be surprised that happened. It seems really mean of the writers. They could have just had him die protecting Sansa in a sword fight or something. No need to make it even worse for him. But, we all know what a cruel world.
I mean, yeah, it would be a true tragedy, in every definition of the word.
But in the books, he's currently got captured by Stannis, and I would not be surprised if Stannis burns him to appease the North, who want his head on a platter. So by just having the Boltons do it, could make his fate relatively the same.
I guess he would have King's blood, huh?
Yeah. Well, he would have King's blood for Stannis, if that even matters. But also, I don't know if I remember exactly from the sample chapter, but Stannis says that, one, he's pissed at Theon and calls him a traitor and a turncloak and all this stuff. But also, the North wants Theon dead. Theon betrayed the Starks and started the whole thing that got them out of Winterfell. So maybe his fate will end up the same. But he's a tragic character all around, and I hope whatever happens to him is just not too bad. Or not too gruesome, at least. So that's them, and then we have the Boltons in Winterfell. Fuck, man. Rest in peace, Roose Bolton. That was one of the sadder losses for me, because I think he was a great villain. Ramsay's just ridiculous.
I feel like Ramsay's a bit over the top. They're really, I don't know how much more they can put him over the top. I guess they're maybe trying to show how out of control he is, and Roose is so calculated, but Ramsay is so not. And that's probably going to be his downfall.
And Roose must have known. I mean, he was taunting Ramsay. How could he fall for such a thing? I don't know.
For such a calculated person,
right.
He really missed the boat on that.
Right.
One.
He would have had containment plans for Ramsay in place, because Ramsay's a psycho. And I don't know. It seems all very clear to me that everything that's happened in the show, from Ramsay holding Sansa hostage and raping her, which doesn't happen in the books, to Stannis losing the battle, which hasn't yet happened in the books, and Ramsay killing Roose, which also hasn't yet happened in the books. It's all going down the line so that we can have a fight between Ramsay and Jon and have the big villain versus the big hero. And I don't think it's going to go anything like that in the books. I think Roose is the real threat, and I think that Ramsay... It appears where we last saw the books that Ramsay is going out to fight Stannis, and I think Stannis is going to fuck him up, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of poetic justice in Roose being killed by his own son, and just the character that he is, and the whole background of Ramsay's story and things, and just in that extreme act of violence and how Ramsay was conceived and everything that happened with that, that ends up being his downfall ultimately. And so even though there's this part of me that wanted to see him have a different downfall, and the Starks be behind it because of the role he played at the Red Wedding, I kind of do like this aspect that his own son killed him.
Yeah, I'm going to miss the actor too. That guy, I loved his voice and the looks he gave. Him and Barristan Selmy, just... these good, talented, kind of old school actors. I'm sad to see him go. I was bummed out about Roose getting stabbed, but it didn't surprise me at all. You could see it coming the way he kept taunting Ramsay.
Well, and a lot of times he taunted Ramsay to just kind of Ramsay just likes to play with his food all the time, and I think sometimes he gets a little carried away with it, and I think sometimes Roose just tried to put Ramsay in his place sometimes, and unfortunately it just... didn't work out for him here in the end, but and I think in his own way he's trying to parent his son, who gets a little out of control sometimes when he likes to really torture emotionally and physically other people.
Right. Okay, so anything else about Winterfell?
Yeah, I guess the last really quick thing is poor Walda, that
yeah, it sucked.
Poor woman, it's just wrong. It's more than wrong place, wrong time. It's just wrong marriage, wrong life.
Yeah, everything about that sucked.
It was painful. Like, they kind of dragged that scene out a little bit, or maybe that was just, it felt that way to me.
They just want to do everything they can about Ramsay. Like, another thing that made me sad about losing Roose is that Ramsay briefly showed some emotion when Miranda died, which she was the only woman that feared me and blah, blah, blah. But then the only other time we saw him not being the super sadistic alpha in control of everything is when he talked to his dad. He was scared of his dad and felt incredibly insecure about him and wanted to impress his dad. So it was the only time we got to see him not completely in cartoon supervillain mode. And now that that's gone, pretty much now from here he's just going to be a cartoon.
Well, I also feel like the show is trying to make people not want to have children. We have Tyrion killing his dad, and now Ramsay killing his dad, and it's just kind of one of those things
Stannis
where
killing his girl.
So many family members killing other family members here, and I don't think that's going to be the last that we see of family members killing family members either. And it's just, it kind of really goes against, I think, like this unspoken code of, you just don't do that. And
it's not an unspoken code. It's the big rules of Westeros. And then we're seeing it all the time. But, this is based loosely on, I guess, the War of the Roses, which I purposely have not looked into because I don't want to know what's going to happen in Game of Thrones. But I guess this stuff was just commonplace in medieval England. So
yeah.
All right, so we saw the Iron Islands tonight. We did not see it in the first episode, but Balon Greyjoy thrown off the bridge by, I guess, Euron. Did it said it's his brother, but they didn't say his name.
I don't think they said which one, but I do think it's Euron, and that's a Danish actor. I'll just throw in there. But it's something where, I'm surprised, honestly, that it took this long for them to kill him off.
Yeah, the whole thing was kind of dumb to me. You see this other dude standing on the bridge, and then Balon's talking trash. It was obvious what was going to happen. It's like all Balon had to do was back up a little bit and act like an intelligent person would. This guy's been king for so long, so it was a little predictable exactly how that was going to go down. But in the books, he died way long ago, thrown off or fell off the bridge or whatever. He died back when Melisandre threw the leeches in the fire. So that was one thing that as being a Stannis fan, when Balon's talking trash and he's like, the War of Five Kings they call it, and the other four are dead. In the books, the other four are dead, but the last remaining king is Stannis, not Balon. Balon died in book 2 or 3, I think. But yeah, so that scene, whatever, it sets up the King's Moot. So
which in the books, I wasn't really interested that much in this plot line until the King's Moot started happening. And so I'm a little bit excited to see this hopefully unfold here in season 6 of the show, just because they're going to maybe draw in some of this and make some of these characters and this house perhaps a little bit more interesting, but we'll see.
Right. So I don't remember the books exactly, but Yara loses the King's Moot. She goes down to Deepwood Mott, so she is also Stannis's captive in the books at this point. Mm-hmm. So Stannis has Yara and Theon outside Winterfell. So yeah, they're just completely going off track on this storyline, and who knows exactly where it'll go.
I feel like they're really trying to establish, though. I think at one point Yara or Asha in the book says how they're just so invincible on the sea. So I think they're really just trying to establish how great they are when out at sea. And what do you know? In episode 1, Daenerys' entire fleet of ships is burned. So I'm wondering if they're just kind of setting up a little bit about how the Ironborn are going to connect with Daenerys and Meereen and become the fleet that she now is going to need in order to get back to Westeros.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard for me to picture the Ironborn. They're rebellious by nature. I don't know why they would work with...
I think they're like Klingons.
Yeah. I don't know why they'd work with Dany in that way, but who knows? That's the one... Yeah, that's hard to predict. And I really wasn't into the Greyjoy storyline in the books either. I would zone out a lot during those parts. So before we go to Dany, let's just stop in King's Landing. I think King's Landing has been really good this season, both episodes. I didn't like King's Landing last year. Just only Cersei's Walk of Shame was interesting. I thought the Faith Militant was rushed and awkward, and I wasn't convinced by the way the Tyrells were thrown in jail. I thought it was all done very clunky. But so far this season, it's been really good. Poor Cersei, the acting by Lena Headey is really good. Whatever her last name is, when she is all excited to see her daughter, she's like jumping like a little girl, and then her face changes all in that one scene.
And I feel like we're watching. So last season they introduced Maggie the Frog and her prophecies for Cersei, and I think we're watching Cersei fully start to understand that the prophecies are all coming true,
Right.
And that it's difficult, I think, for her to accept that. But yet, I think part of what I love so much about Cersei's character is she's just not insightful for a lot of things. So even though I think she might be making some of these connections, I think it's still something where we saw here in episode 2 where Tommen's like, can you help me, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of see her get that determination in her eye again. And I feel like she might be a part of her final child's downfall and death.
Yeah, it's going to be sad when Tommen goes. Poor kid. Finally, like, showed a little personality and attitude this episode. And I thought he was going to die right there. In the previews, you see an explosion, and I don't know what it is. I can't even tell where it's happening. But as soon as she was like, he was talking to Cersei and apologizing, and she was forgiving him, I thought something was going to explode, and he was going to get covered in rocks and glass, and that was going to be it. But he's toast at some point, and that's going to be sad to see. I think that kid does a good job acting, and he's a little kid. Once he grew up a little bit, he could potentially be a good king.
Yeah, he's a sweet boy, and he was portrayed as that in the books and stuff. And I wish they would bring back Sir Pounce just for a couple little more cameos, but
yeah.
All right. What's interesting, too, with Cersei in episode 2 here is Robert Strong is basically her second shadow, and there at her every turn. And basically,
yeah,
I mean...
quickly, I don't think in the show they referred to him as Robert Strong, but that's the Mountain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the books he's called Robert Strong. Already they're doing a fantastic job with him.
Well, and like he's really there for her. That Qyburn really did a good job making sure that he's devoted 100% to Cersei. So even if someone's slandering her, I guess he's going to go around and defend her honor, I guess, if you could call it that. That dude is freaky, though. I mean, every time we get that little shot of his like blue face and bloodshot eyes, he's just there's something about him that's just a little bit scary for me, which they're doing a great job with.
So here's a question for you: do you think that's the Mountain's head under there? Or is that somebody else's head?
I don't know. I mean, most of it's the Mountain because clearly he's a big guy, and the only other person who is of that size is the Mountain. But
so listen to these two theories, which I hope neither are correct. But I think it was last season they bring a dwarf's head to Cersei, and he's like, "Oh, it's not Tyrion." And then Qyburn's like, "Can I keep that head?"
Yeah. Well, once you said that, I was like, "Oh my god!" I remember them saying, and I feel like every line in this show is in there for a reason.
Right.
They only have so much time to get things in there, and oh my goodness, that would be very interesting, I guess.
Well, and then here's one that's even more terrible: is that what if? And I just don't see any way this could happen. But what if that's Robb Stark's head on there?
I hope not, but I don't think so because that was all the way at the twins,
Yeah.
and no, I don't think that could be it. I think that's just something to make fans feel horrified. But,
yeah. Well, the Lannisters were carrying around his head though, or carrying around his body with the wolf's head on it, so they did remove his head.
Right. I just don't know how they would have teleported it to
Right.
King's Landing to Qyburn with all of that, especially before it decays or something.
Yeah. But in the books, Dorne is demanding the skull of the Mountain, and they send Dorne a giant skull. So that's what kickstarts the idea that.
But I think they gave him a fake one. But I guess we don't know.
Yeah.
I do feel like one thing I'm really interested in is I feel like both the books and the show really set up this rivalry and hatred between the Mountain and the Hound, and just to have them both supposedly be dead, which again it looks like the Mountain is so-called back. I do think they're going to bring back the Hound, which I've mentioned already, and I'm hoping that they come back together, and that's how that ends. I hope they tie up this Clegane House feud with these two brothers.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be a likely storyline. One thing that bothers me about this is that if they do bring back the Hound and he does fight the Mountain, I mean, one, I just don't think he can beat the Mountain, the new and improved badass Mountain. But on top of that, as exciting as the fight was between the Hound and Brienne, it kind of undermined, to me, the epicness of a fight between the Mountain and the Hound. Because we know the Hound, well, he's tough, but
he was also injured, though, in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, he had the bite on his neck and a little infection, and they did in the episode before. Arya was like, "Oh, you're moving a little bit slower," and then when Brienne stumbles upon them, the Hound was fixing his belt. He had been taking a crap, maybe he had diarrhea, he was sick or whatever. But I don't know. I just feel like they kind
That's a lot of thought you put into that.
I just feel like they a little bit undermined it. The two toughest guys, it's more like the toughest guy against like the fourth or fifth or sixth toughest guy.
But you know what? There's a lot of story that can still happen between now and then, if that even happens. Yeah. And again, that's what makes Game of Thrones so amazing, is how they kind of fill in the story sometimes when it's not rushed.
Yeah, and I've been happy with the way they've done the Mountain in the last 2 episodes. And you know it's bad when you're rooting for Cersei in the Mountain to kill people. Like, you know that you really hate the Faith. And that dude that plays the High Sparrow, he does a great job. And
Jonathan Pryce.
Yeah, you like him even though all the things he's doing are so annoying and so like abuse of power and religion and all this stuff. He seems genuinely sincere, and you know he's doing what a true believer would do.
And he's also got a point though, that a lot of these, common people that have been walked on for so long, especially by people like the Lannisters, if you bring enough of them together, and it's the same thing that Mance did with all of the people, the tribes north of the wall. If you can find a way to bring a bunch of people together, they can be very strong.
Right. Yeah, he's uniting everyone who has no say in the world. But yeah, it's good. It's good storytelling when you're, like I said, rooting for the big villains of the piece. And I look forward to the Mountain just ripping people apart.
I'm curious what's going to happen with Septa Unella, the one that said shame last season, and who plays bad cop in all of these interrogations.
Yeah, I won't be sad when she gets
Cersei said twice last season of like, the last thing you're going to see is my face before you die. And again, I'm part of me, I'm like, all right, if they give that much time to her saying it twice, I'm just kind of curious what's going to happen with her with that. Just going to Jaime, I didn't really like his character, and then I liked his character, and now I'm starting to get bored with his character again. He's starting to be more one-dimensional again, and I'm kind of hoping, like I don't really care about him trying to make things better with Cersei or do that sort of stuff. Like, I'd like to see him try to get back to what we saw with him caring about the Stark girls and his promise to Catelyn Stark and his relationship with Brienne. Like, I think we're going to see more come up with that later this season, or at least I'm hoping so. But like, part of me is a little bit bored with him right now, and I hope that changes.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit here. As a book reader, I'm of course annoyed that they're not following the books, and Jaime's supposed to be in the Riverlands at this point, and maybe he'll go there, whatever. But I noticed that the actor tonight seemed to be walking and talking like Jaime of season 1. He looked cocky, and he looked like just ready to kill people. And I kind of I don't know if I would buy that there would be a complete transformation in Jaime. Even if he does become a good guy, or if we consider him now a good guy, I still like that he's a little bit of a swaggering, pompous person. And I think I felt like tonight that was a little bit more on display.
Yeah, and I do like that. It's just, I find it very predictable for him to love Cersei and want to take care of her, and for him to be a fighter. I mean, that's the kind of one-dimensional aspect that we see from him mostly in season 1, or predominantly in season 1. And it's not until he starts to reveal why he killed the Mad King, and that he actually seems to care about his promise to Catelyn Stark when he gives Brienne that sword. And I miss a little bit of that in him. Like, it's nice to see him get back to some of his roots, but it's just this pendulum back and forth. Sometimes I start to lose interest a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, it's still early, and so I will reserve judgment until the end of this season. But I feel like they've kind of been holding him in this pattern for a little bit, and I'd like to see a little more from Jaime.
All right, so let's move quickly to the shit fest that we call Dorne.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Luckily, it wasn't even in episode 2. Episode 1, the whole thing was terrible, just like the last season.
I mean, last season was just so bad.
Yeah, the whole thing was terrible, and it's almost like they were like, you know what? It was so bad last season that let's just like kill some people and maybe take a break from it for a little while. But it's like, Doran is an important character in the book, but I was a Star Trek fan. I was happy to see Alexander Siddig acting again, and I wanted to see him do something as Prince Doran, whatever. And then they just kill him, and they kill Ariel Hota, who's supposed to be this great fighter. and I wanted to see him fight somebody. The whole thing is stupid. And now is Ilaria, is she the queen of Dorne now? Like, what?
I think they're trying to make something where Dorne is going to be run by women, and they're trying to make a point with that in the show.
Like they're backing away from all the criticism they get, and they're trying to do a
I don't know. I
thing.
mean, this might... the show is way further ahead or different, at least at this point, than the book, so I'm not quite sure like if this was going to always end up happening anyway, but it is something where I feel like that is the route that they're going, and maybe they... I mean, I remember reading something where the showrunners don't really care what people want, or they're going to do things their way and tell their story, and they're not really going to cater too much to what the fans or the populace is saying what they want, but
Yeah.
I think that's what is happening now, and I mean, there is some point where where Cersei and Oberyn were talking, and he's like, no one hurts little girls in Dorne, and Cersei's reply is, little girls get hurt everywhere.
Right.
And I think that these sand snakes and Illyria, what's her name, Oberyn's?
I think Illyria.
Illyria. I think they're just tired of seeing the same thing over and over and over again, and they realize, wait a minute, we're pretty tough. Let's see what we can do. And so, okay.
But then they're the ones that go on and hurt the little girl.
But well, and that's the thing that like I don't really buy. Like I get why they might hurt Marcella, and I do get that in their mind with things as part of their revenge, because they're really it's they are against the Lannisters specifically in the mountain, but. For them to kill Trystane, that doesn't make sense. Like, I understand that they may have to get Prince Doran out of the way. And, like, I'm not saying I agree with it or like that part, but I can at least come from that. But it completely undermines them to kill an innocent prince who had nothing to do with anything.
Right. Her whole beef is that Oberyn was killed. And Oberyn was killed in a fair fight that he brought upon himself. So it wasn't even anything, like, he's not the victim of anything. She was there. She saw what happened. But then, so not only that, but... the way she goes about avenging Oberyn is by killing his brother and his nephew and wiping the Martells off the planet. It's like, doesn't make any sense. I just think it's really bad writing.
They're not wiped off. I mean, Oberyn had many children.
Well, he had the Sand Snakes. He had all girls. But the Martell name is gone.
What's wrong with girls?
Nothing, but they're not called Martells. And as far as we know, Oberyn loved Doran and Oberyn loved Trystane. So as far as we know. So I don't know. It just... the
Doran is just bad. Let's see what happens. Again, we're only 2 episodes in, but they have so much to come back from after last season.
I do have one hope. The only hope I have is that, so in the preview for next episode, we saw that we're going to get the Tower of Joy.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that.
Well, so we're going to meet Arthur Dayne, whatever his first name is. Arthur Dayne. And the Tower of Joy takes place in Dorne. So if somehow they fit the Dane family into Dorne and maybe they become the leaders of Dorne or something like that. I don't know. But it doesn't make any sense to me that Ilaria Sand is suddenly the queen or the princess or whatever. But if somehow the Danes who are still alive in the books, not Arthur Dayne, but Darkstar, whatever his name is, and a few other of the...
Yeah, because I think Ned gave the sword back to Arthur Dayne's sister.
Right. So that's the only way I see the Dorne storyline being salvaged. But the fact that it wasn't in it tonight and they might not even show up again until episode 8 or 9 or something. Okay, Dorne, let's get out of there. Anything else you want to say there?
No.
All right, and then Marine, Tyrion, and Varys are there. In episode 1, they didn't do much. I didn't really like them walking around without bodyguards. That seems silly to me.
Well, and how are you not going to notice a guy of Tyrion's height? Like, it's one thing, like, if I mean, he's just such a noticeable guy. Right. And so, like, I didn't buy that at all, that they're trying to be inconspicuous, where he's just... And they go out of their way so many times, like, not only just the fact that he's a dwarf, but the fact that he's got... The show doesn't... The actor, they don't have him this, but he's got these mismatched eyes and the scars on his face. In the books, he doesn't even have a nose. And I get this is the show and it's a little bit different, but still, it's like, yeah, that's going to be really noticeable. And you've got all these Sons of the Harpy running around killing people. Like, that just seemed a little stupid to me.
That was a little silly. And then, so they have, they're talking about who is running the Sons of the Harpy, right? Like, who's in charge? We thought it was going to be Hisdar, but he got killed at the end of last season. So this is kind of a weird storyline there. Like, where are they going with this? It's... The leader of the Harpy, this big mystery, is either going to be someone we don't know because we don't know that many people in Marine, or it's going to be somebody we do know, which is like, who are our choices? If Hisdar is dead, then
I could almost even see it being her lover.
yeah, Dario. By process of elimination, if the story is going to be some big reveal, it's got to be Dario. There's no one. It's not Tyrion. It's not Varys. It's not Grey Worm. It's not Jorah. And that's all that we know. There.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because they are making a point in the show where last season she tried to do justice and have the law be the law, and she killed one of those people from her small council who went behind her back and killed somebody else. And so you remember when she beheaded him, and then all the former slaves kind of turned and started hissing at her. So you kind of combine that, and then there was something written on the wall in episode 1 of season 6 here where it says Misa is a master.
Yeah.
And so they're really showing that, like, I don't think she's liked by the slave masters or the former slaves.
Well, and what they said tonight, they only said it in conversation, so a lot of people probably missed it, but the other 2 cities that she conquered have fallen back into the way they were before she showed up.
Right.
So,
it's like that a lot of things keep reverting back.
Right.
And so...
So, Dany's going to be worthless, and when she gets to Westeros, they're showing...
you don't like her character.
I'm not a Dany fan, but they're just showing that she can't govern. I guess Tyrion, if Tyrion is the hand of the queen, he can do all the governing. But I did like the scene of Tyrion freeing the dragons. He acted that very well. I thought the CGI was good. The dragons looked good. So I thought that was well done, and they allowed Tyrion to do it, which is interesting, which may have some meaning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's so much or a lot more to say about this yet because not a whole lot has happened. Yeah. So we'll just continue to see. I mean, I do like seeing Tyrion in this place where he's not like the face of being the ruler, but he's kind of behind the scenes, and yet he's very good at that. And it's what Varys has really liked in Tyrion ever since he was Hand. And so I kind of like seeing us kind of get reunited with this Tyrion again, who's really in his element.
Yeah. All right, anything else in Marine? Okay. And then Dany's with the Dothraki. I liked that scene in the first episode. I thought that was funny and well done. We'll see where that goes. I hope it doesn't come down to just Drogon showing up and then all the Dothraki bowing and kissing her ass because she has a dragon. I would like to see some more sophisticated development for how, assuming that she wins the Dothraki to be her army, I would like to see that play out in an interesting way, not just in a dragon comes along way.
Well, I think that they're going to be hard on her yet. I think that it's still not going to be easy for Dany yet with the Dothraki. And then, I mean, we already saw from previews for the season that Drogon's going to come by. I mean, ultimately, I think that is what's going to happen. He's going to come by. She has literally no leverage with them until her dragons come or till Drogon comes. So
right, it'd just be so much more powerful if somehow she could actually do something herself, not with the dragons, not with Jorah, not if she could somehow become the queen of whatever just through her sheer ability of leadership. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think this is also just part of the prophecy of like she has to go back in order to go forward, and her story really starts with the Dothraki. So I feel like her going back here is going to be her way of how she moves forward. And it's really more about her character development than necessarily proving to the Dothraki how badass she is. Even though that might be a part of it, I think it's still her learning about herself and kind of fulfilling who she's supposed to be.
All right, and then the last thing is Arya. I guess not too much to say about Arya. She's being trained. That's cool. More training to become a ninja or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think losing her sight is going to be a great way. Like, there seems to be a theme of a lot of the characters that we're talking about that they seem to be going back to how we were introduced to them in some ways. And if you remember back in season 1, she's training with
Serial Pharrell.
Yeah, and she was so dedicated to that.
She's been training for 6 seasons now.
But this is such a great way to really just be such a badass fighter.
Yeah.
Because if you can do it without relying on your sense of sight, she's just going to be that much better of someone who can be unseen if she wants to. So far, I think that this is following the books fairly closely, and we haven't seen a whole lot yet. I'm hoping that she wargs, and that's kind of how she helps hone her abilities. I think there's this thing where all the Starks have this potential ability that's there, and I'm hoping that the show develops that a little bit more.
The Arya storyline I find like a little bit boring, but I do like the House of Black and White, and I like that dude that plays Jaqen Hagar, and I like Jaqen Hagar. And the one thing I do like about the Arya storyline is that I completely have no idea what role she's going to play in the story.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
Who she's going to kill or what she's going to do. The only clue we have is Melisandre in season 3 or 4 or something looking at her, and I don't even remember what she said, but something along the lines of I see death in your eyes or something like that. I don't remember. But so she's going to do major things, and it's to me completely unpredictable. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so all in all, for the first 2 episodes, I liked them pretty well. Or at least the second one. I give the first one like a 6 out of 10, and the second one like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I would probably give them both an 8 out of 10. Okay. I like the first one more than you did. Like, I mean, no first episode this season has really given us a whole lot more. It's more like a check-in from where we left off. So, I mean, it kind of just met my expectations with that. But I did enjoy it. I liked being reunited with so many of the characters, and it gave us a taste of enough of what we needed to get us to this episode 2. I'm giving episode 2 an 8 just because some really big stuff happened in it. And so I'm kind of just happy to have that, satisfied as a viewer.
Yeah.
But I think it could have been done a little bit better too.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly got the ball rolling pretty quick with episode 2.
I think it's going to be an exciting season.
Yeah. All right, so I think hopefully this will get a good response and people like it. We'll maybe do it every other episode. I was originally going to do it mid-season, so after 5, a mid-season review, and then after episode 10, a season review, but so much happens in this show, I think every 2 episodes might be a little easier. Cool, well, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.